Hello. So I'm Natalie, or Cordie if you know me on Twitter. I'm currently a continuity midwife in Kent, and I absolutely love it. I can't gush about it enough. Probably sometimes too much. I'm also a mother. I've got two sons, one that's 21, nearly 22. No, I don't look it, but yeah. He's nearly 22. And I'm just going to talk to you about blogging really and how I came to do that, and also about continuity as well, because it's a massive part of my life. So I don't think I'm a writer. Definitely don't think I'm a writer. I'm more of a talker. But when I said to my mum I was going to come on and talk about blogging, she was like, "Oh yes, you are a writer." And I was like, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, you had loads of pen pals when you was a child." I was like, No, I don't mean that." And then she's like, "What about that diary you used to write? I used to like reading that." Oh, really? Okay. But I wouldn't say I did write, but I think I did, because I used to write about how I felt and like thoughts and feelings. I used to process things by writing them down. So I do think that I naturally went to doing blogging once I'd been prompted a bit. So you don't have to be great at it. You can just write how you feel. So that's what's great about blogging. I didn't set out to do it. I started off with tweeting, and then I saw other people's blogs, and that's what made me want to try it. If you talk to anybody that knows me, I'm not into tech at all. I'm rubbish at that sort of stuff. I love Facebook, I love Instagram, but I'm really not good at tech. My Jasmine team colleagues will definitely tell you, don't let me touch a spreadsheet. I'm really not. But I do what everybody does. You go to Google, you ask it how to do something, and it tells you. And that's what I did. So I set up a site and I started writing a blog, and I really started writing it about positivity and about the roller coaster that I was on, training to be a midwife at the time. It was really good because I had lots of like worries and concerns that were more about myself. I had a lot of guilt, a lot of mummy guilt, because I was leaving my two young sons to pursue my dream job. And I was missing out on them. I was spending days where I didn't see them, and the shift pattern of nights, I didn't have hardly any contact with them, whereas before I'd been a full-time mum. So that was a big thing. But the blog helped me with that, because I was able to sort of write that, and then people started commenting back on it and actually contacted me and messaged me and said, "No, you're not on your own, like I feel the same, I haven't seen my kids for so many days," and things like that. So that's where I started, and I started writing them on and off. I wasn't writing them all the time. I just would write them when I felt inspired. A lot of the time it was musing and just thinking about something, and then I'd write a little blog about it. And luckily I'd joined the Twitter world, and I was part of the Twitter sort of midwifery community. That's absolutely amazing, by the way. So if you're not on Twitter, then definitely go on there. Obviously Twitter has its pitfalls, we all know that. It has its negativity as well, but there are some great people on there. There's no hierarchy on there. You can tweet whoever you want, and sometimes they tweet back, so it's really good, and you can make connections that way. That's how I sort of came into doing it. So I read a blog and started doing them myself. When I reflect on it now, I look back on it now, I think it was a form of self-care at the time, because it just gave me an outlet. I wasn't writing an essay, I wasn't on a deadline. I could just write it as I felt it, and it helped me to process how I was feeling about things. I wrote a few that was about my midwifery heroes, and then I wrote one about transitioning into being a newly qualified midwife. The newly qualified that's constantly looking over their shoulder trying to find their mentor, and she's gone. And then I sort of left blogging for quite a while, actually, as I sort of became the midwife, and I loved it. I loved being the midwife, and I loved being a rotational midwife. But I became quite overwhelmed by it. And I will totally hold my hands up and say that there wasn't an incident, there wasn't anything that was, that upset me or anything like that at work or in my family life even. But I just became overwhelmed with the shifts and the feelings that I felt of not having enough time, and whether I was good enough, whether I was, able to actually do the job. And so I had a mental health crisis, and I did have to step away for a few weeks, and actually a few months, to sort of get myself back. And that was felt by everybody. That's felt by my friends and my family, and everybody said, you need to work on this. What's happened? And that was huge for me. I had sort of mental health back in my past. When I lost my dad, he died of a brain tumor, and so I knew those feelings. I knew I was depressed. But then again, Twitter came to my rescue with a few Twitter people who I knew as well had difficulties with their mental health, and some of it was linked to midwifery and their work and struggling, but it was also just part of the human condition. And they said to me, don't maybe go back to writing again. And I was like, no, I don't really want to write blogs. But they said, write one line a day. Write just one line a day about something good, about something that's making you feel good about yourself. And so that's what I started doing. I started writing a line a day, and that did help. That really did help. And I came back to work, and again, I love being a rotational midwife. I love doing all the different things, but there was something missing. So when the job came to be a continuity midwife, yeah, I was, hands up, that's me, I want to go. And we, in January 2020, we began the Jasmine team amongst COVID, obviously. So that was a challenge in itself, coming out and being part of a team that was, trying to adapt, trying to be a new type of midwife for us. None of us had done that, been in that model before. Some of us had worked together in the hospital, some were community midwives, so we sort of all merged together, and we set out and became a team. And I'm not here to say that continuity is all unicorns and rainbows, and it's but it works for me. The work-life balance that I now have is amazing. I feel much better in myself. I'm not doing the 12-hour shifts that I was doing before. We're lucky that we're a really good team. We really work well together. We communicate really well, and we've worked out how to work together. But also, we have a really good shared philosophy of care. And we look after each other. We're a really good support system for each other. So I think that's a really big thing of why I'm like pro continuity, and I'm shouting it from the rooftops. It really makes going to work an absolute joy. I open my diary and I know everybody there, and I know the dog's name. I know everything. I'm so happy to go to work. But that brought me back to my blog, and that's the one that Sue saw. I wrote a blog because I had become a practice assessor, and I had students that were sitting in front of me and talking about what they were doing in the community and hospital. And of course they were saying, what's your life like? What's continuity like? And there I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. You're going to love it. And so I thought, I better come back to the blog and write that. So that's what I did. So I'm just going to read you just like a tiny little excerpt of what I wrote when I came back to my blog, which was this. Well, I'm a continuity midwife now, and I have been for over a year. I am the person-centered practitioner I always wanted to be. I have relational continuity with women and families in my care. The joy and privilege of my work brings me great satisfaction. I share the love I have for my work all the time. Yes, I'm the midwife that's grinning behind the mask. The midwife that people say, you look so happy. And that's it. That's me. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm really happy to be on here and also to answer any questions about continuity. Obviously I've not talked about the technical side of it or what we do in terms of off duties and things like that, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions about that if anyone has any.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. That was very you, Nat.
Yeah, I know.
And it was, I mean, I think it's really, very helpful for people, because I know blogs sort of, when you see online, and you usually get into a blog either by finding something via Google or usually via Twitter and find it, and there is a sort of sense of, well, where did that come from, and how do you actually set it up and write it? And actually, I usually keep the questions for the end, but since you've been very passionate there, I can squeeze a little question in. And Sarah Neal has said, I've always felt I'd love to blog, but wouldn't know where to start, which is just what I was thinking. I've tried Google, but it baffled me. Do you pay for your site? Can you recommend a site to use? Or you'd have to, if you recommend one, you'll have to recommend more than one, of course.
Oh, I honestly don't know more than one. So I must have hit the jackpot the first time I looked. Yeah, there are free ones. And then once you've used it for so long, you then can subscribe and then update it and make it, a little bit more flash. But my one I set up was just a free one. So do you want me to say it?
Well, I guess
it was wordpress.com.
I think that's I think it's quite a common tool, isn't it? So wordpress.com. And was it fairly easy to set up now?
Honestly, I am so not tech savvy. So if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Okay, that's fabulous. That's grand. I mean, what I'd probably say is I think what Nat's really described in the writing down the sentence day, because I think when you're starting to write, and some people who are listening are people who are interested in writing, but sometimes when you start to write, it does feel a bit overwhelming to have a whole blog to fill. But if you had started out by writing in a little journal, and a daily thing of how you're feeling, or, sometimes some people get into it by writing a response to, I would say the newspapers, a dear editor, in response to an article, or in any journal, actually, because sometimes I can remember the great Caroline Flint used to do a fantastic article in, I think it was the Nursing Times, and it used to be something I used to love to read, and I wanted to get into doing the same sort of thing and responding. But so you get into writing letters to say how marvelous this is. Fantastic. Anyway, okay, I've got another question for you, so you don't get away yet. Chris Warren, hi Chris, says continuity works well for most if they have autonomy. It's worked for me as an independent midwife for 30 years. Do you sort your own diary and workload?
Yes, is the answer. I have my own diary. We actually are self-rostering. So we work out our own days and our working hours. We only have a set day a week that we are a long day, which is our on-call for labour, and our night on call for labour. Other than that, our diary is completely free and ours to do with what we want to do. So we do pick and choose our hours. So that's great.
Okay. And do you ever get called into when it gets busy in the hospital? So I know
no, we're not.
Some teams have described.
We're very lucky. We're not part of the escalation for the unit, and the traditional community midwives do that, which we're very, very thankful for. When in times of COVID last year, we did become part of the escalation policy, but now we're not. We're back doing our own role, and we're not part of that, so we don't get called into the unit. We are there if we are there as a Labour Day on call, and we don't have any Jasmine women labouring. Obviously, we're midwives. We're there. We do sort of step up and help the unit as we can.
Fabulous, beautifully answered. Thank you. And then I've got one more from Nina Fugsang. I think I've pronounced that very badly, so I'll just say Nina. How are the former community midwives finding their setting into continuity? As a student, I know a few community midwives who worry about this. Good question, Nina.
Well, obviously, I don't come from traditional community midwifery. I come from hospital, but obviously, I've got colleagues that have done R, so I'll speak as if I'm them. Okay, they absolutely love it. They are not having clinics with 20, 30 people anymore. They're having clinics that we don't actually have a clinical space at the moment because of COVID. Our children's centre is still shut. So we're actually going in people's homes still. So so they love that they're not seeing so many faces, that they're actually, their caseload means that they can really get to know people. So that's the major difference.
It feels a lot as though the autonomy is the biggest bit of it, though, to me. No, it sounds fabulous. Fantastic. Okay, now Sarah Victoria Kruger says, Nat, you're a real credit to our profession. I'm privileged to call you a colleague. Do you know Sarah Victoria?
Yeah, she's a Jasmine.
Oh.
She's a Jasmine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's really lovely.
And then Pia Caprioli says, does your blog have a title and how do I find it?
It's natcordyblogs.com. Okay,
I should have put that on the resource thing, but we'll put that on the resource page later, so you'll be able to find it. That's fantastic. Well, we're letting you have a rest now for a little while, Nat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But there'll be more questions at the end, so don't run away, will you? Okay, so we can now move to Leah Hazard.
Thanks for watching this video from the Maternity and Midwifery Forum. For more expert opinion and analysis, hit the button below to subscribe.